Some stories don't begin with vows or rings. They begin with a trip, a weekend, a choice to join even when you're not sure if you belong, snow on the ground, the hum of skis carving down, the hush of a fire waiting at night. Welcome to Men Being Too Intimate, an audio story series exploring what happens when two men blur the emotional lines between certainty and hesitation, between command and caution, between keeping it casual and realizing it never was. Tonight's story brings us to Whistler, British Columbia, where an ENTJ seasoned, commanding, sure of himself, and an INTJ younger, thoughtful, still uncertain, spend one weekend in the snow with friends who've already built a life, with silences that speak louder than laughter, and with a fire that burns warmer than either expected. This is Men Being Too Intimate, the unplanned weekend. It wasn't snowing tonight. The city outside Alex's windows was damp with the ordinary drizzle of Vancouver winter, street lamps bending the mist into halos. Inside, the living room was dim, the only glow coming from the television murmuring a movie neither of them were really watching. Ethan was stretched along the couch, half reclined, his shoulder pressed into Alex's chest. The blanket Alex had pulled over them was soft, heavy, smelling faintly of cedar from the storage trunk. Ethan felt warm, lulled by the absent-minded rhythm of Alex's hand brushing along his arm. It was in that comfort, in that lull, that Alex said it. "Mark and Daniel are planning the Whistler trip again. Come with me." Ethan's body tensed before his mind caught up. He shifted, lifting his head from Alex's shoulder, blinking at him. "Whistler, with your friends." Alex didn't look away from the screen, though his mouth curved faintly. "It'll be fun." Ethan sat up straighter, putting a little space between them, the blanket sliding down. The sudden distance made the room feel cooler. "We've only been, a few months? I'm not sure I'm the right plus one for something like that." Alex turned, one arm still draped across the couch back. His gaze was steady, patient, the kind that never seemed to waver even when he was being challenged. "It's not about right. It's about wanting you there." Ethan looked at the coffee table, at the mug still half full, at anything but Alex's eyes. His voice came out quieter, edged with defensiveness. "I don't want to sit through a weekend of inside jokes and stories I can't add to. I'd rather not." But Alex leaned forward slightly, his voice dropping low, sure of itself without being forceful. "You're not trouble, Ethan. You're not a burden. You're the reason I'll enjoy it." The certainty in his tone landed heavier than Ethan expected, like something too steady to argue against. He exhaled, ran a hand through his hair, then pulled the blanket off his lap. "I should probably get back to my place." The words slipped out like an excuse, softer than no, but nowhere near yes. Alex didn't argue. He only nodded, rising to fetch Ethan's jacket from the chair where it always landed when he stayed late. Ethan slipped it on, the silence between them stretching. Not awkward, just full. At the door, he leaned in, pressed a quick kiss to Alex's cheek. Not a hug, not a promise. Just enough to say I was here without saying more. Then he was gone, the apartment door closing behind him, leaving Alex in the quiet glow of the television, the invitation still hanging in the room. Ethan's apartment always reminded Alex of the years before everything became polished. Before corner offices and catered dinners, before curated furniture and staged perfection. It wasn't messy, but it was lived in. Books stacked in uneven towers by the sofa. A lamp with a dented shade throwing warm light across the room. Sketches and photographs tacked to the fridge with mismatched magnets, one of them holding up a takeout menu that looked like it had been there for months. Alex let his gaze linger, not for the first time, but with the same quiet fondness as before. He liked the coziness of it. The space carried no performance, no need to impress. It pulled him back in small ways to when he was younger, when life fit into compact apartments and dinners were improvised. From the kitchen, steam rose in curls, carrying garlic and basil. Ethan moved with an easy rhythm, sleeves pushed up, wooden spoon in hand. Alex leaned against the counter, the corner of his mouth twitching as his eyes caught on something by the hallway. A pair of ski gloves set neatly on top of a small duffel. A pair of goggles resting beside them. Not displayed. Not hidden. Just there. Ethan followed his glance and smirked without lifting his eyes from the sauce. "So, ski or snowboard?" Alex raised a brow. "That's your way of admitting it?" "Just a question," Ethan said, his tone light, evasive. He stirred once more and tasted from the spoon, pretending the gloves didn't exist. Alex stepped closer, catching the simmering scent. "Smells good already." Ethan's mouth curved, self-satisfied. "My past is always the best." Alex leaned in, his voice dipping, amused. "Who said I was talking about the food?" The spoon stilled mid-air. Ethan's cheeks colored faintly before he set it down with a quiet clink. He rolled his eyes, muttered something about arrogance, but the shift was already there. Alex closed the small distance, slipping his arms around Ethan's waist from behind. He rested his chin lightly on Ethan's shoulder, voice low against his ear. "Then let me make you a deal. You're my special guest. I'll keep you happy the whole trip. Skiing, food, everything. I'll even carry your bags. Consider me your servant." Ethan huffed, somewhere between a laugh and disbelief. "You? A servant? That'll be the day." But he didn't pull away from the embrace. He just stirred the sauce slower, Alex's presence pressed firm at his back, the unspoken answer lingering in the steam. The drive up had been long enough for Ethan to second-guess himself twice over. By the time they pulled into Whistler, snow had started falling in lazy, slow flakes, dusting the windshield. The tires crunched over packed ice as the chalet came into view, all sharp timber beams, stone foundations, and golden light spilling out across the snow. It was beautiful. Unquestionably beautiful. And yet, something about it set Ethan on edge. Inside, the warmth hit at once. A wide stone fireplace dominated the room, its flames curated as much as they burned. The rugs were thick, the furniture tastefully heavy, every angle softened by design. It was the kind of space that whispered wealth without saying the word. Polished wood. Leather that creaked when touched. Windows so clean they reflected like glass. Ethan carried his bag in, but it felt too small, too plain against the gleam of the floors. He noticed everything at once, his boots dripping water onto a rug that probably wasn't meant for snow. The sound of his zipper breaking the hush. The faint chemical polish lingering beneath the scent of pine. And then the voices. "Alex!" Mark was first, tall, broad, his laugh as booming as his stride. He pulled Alex into a hug with the kind of ease that spoke of decades, not years. Ethan stepped back, uncertain whether to wait or introduce himself, but Mark didn't miss him. He turned, his smile still wide. "So this is him." Before Ethan could respond, Daniel followed, calmer, quieter, his presence precise rather than loud. He offered his hand, firm but not overbearing. "Good to finally meet you," he said, his tone warmer than the words alone. Ethan shook it, the polite smile fixed on his face. But the moment lingered in him. Alex belonged here instantly, laughter flowing, names slipping out like shorthand. Ethan felt like a guest in a play already halfway through its run. The chalet was beautiful, yes. But standing in it, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that even the wood had been sanded smoother than he was. That to really belong here, he'd have to be polished down too. The table was set with more precision than Ethan expected. Not a casual meal between friends, but something plated, measured, the kind of dinner where the wine was decanted. The napkins folded into shapes. The cutlery placed as if anyone cared about the difference between one fork and the next. Ethan sat at Alex's side, straight-backed without meaning to be, hands folded lightly on his lap until the first course arrived. The plates gleamed. The conversation flowed even brighter. Mark carried most of it, booming and animated, stories spilling out across the table like wine poured too generously. Daniel smoothed the rhythm, adding quiet clarifications, keeping the edges of Mark's energy from tipping too far. Alex laughed easily, answering with the ease of a man who had belonged at this table for decades. Ethan tried to smile when they laughed, tried to laugh when they smiled, but he felt the seconds stretch differently for him. Every word he offered seemed to drop lighter than theirs, as if it didn't quite land. His pasta nights and stacks of books felt far away under the shine of crystal and polish. It was Daniel who noticed first. He turned the conversation gently toward Ethan, asking about his latest project, his work in architecture. Not prying, not testing, just attentive. The spotlight felt smaller under his calm tone, but it was still a spotlight, and Ethan measured each word before letting it go. Alex glanced at him then, just briefly, the curve of a smile hidden against the rim of his glass. A glance had said he noticed too. That he knew how much Ethan was balancing just to sit there and not look like he was balancing at all. The food was excellent, the wine smooth, the table gleamed. But to Ethan, it felt like everything around him had been polished more than he had, and maybe more than he ever could be. The room was quieter than the rest of the chalet. The muffled sound of laughter still carried faintly up the stairs, but here it was only firelight flickering under the door and the hush of snow outside the window. Ethan sat on the edge of the bed, jacket half off, shoulders bent as if he were still carrying the weight of the dinner table. His voice was low when he finally said it. "They've known you for decades. I've known you for months." Alex moved closer, kneeling slightly to catch his gaze. His reply came without hesitation, steady as ever. "And you're still the one I wanted to bring." Ethan let out a breath, not quite a laugh, not quite surrender. He leaned back onto his hands, looking at Alex with something cautious but searching. "So we are skiing tomorrow, right?" Alex's grin was slow, mischievous. He leaned in, pushing him gently back onto the mattress. "Who said anything about skiing?" The words landed half a joke, half a promise, and Ethan's laugh caught in his throat as Alex kissed him, not rushed, not casual, but hungry enough to erase the polish of dinner. The distance of the table, the ache of being the outsider. For a moment there was no chalet, no friends, no weight of decades. Only the press of Alex's body, the warmth of the room, the certainty of touch, and outside the snow kept falling. It piled against the balcony rail, soft drifts gathering along the roof. The chalet stood wrapped in silence, the night layering heavier, whiter, as if the world itself had decided to keep their secret. The air was sharp with cold, the kind that stung cheeks and made breath visible in quick bursts. The mountains stretched wide under a bright sky, powder fresh from the night before. Mark and Alex wasted no time. The two of them pushed off together, racing down like boys who hadn't aged a day, carving the slope with competitive joy. Daniel followed at a measured pace, smooth and steady, the kind of skier who trusted the snow to meet him where he was. Ethan lingered at the top, adjusting his gloves for the third time. His skis already felt awkward, heavier than they looked in Alex's hands when he passed them to him that morning. He let himself glide only a few feet before muttering under his breath, half laughing, half frustrated. When Alex circled back, grinning and breathless, Ethan finally admitted it. "I'm more of a bored." Alex laughed, tugging his goggles up, his grin wide and unbothered. "And you didn't tell me this before today?" Ethan shrugged, embarrassed. "Didn't think it mattered." "Of course it matters," Alex said, still smiling. "But hey, you'll manage. You're stubborn enough." Ethan set his jaw. "I got this." Before Alex could reply, Ethan pushed off. For a few seconds he moved cleanly, cutting across the slope, but speed built quickly. His balance wavered. A sharp edge caught. He tumbled forward, snow puffing up around him as he slid to a stop halfway down. Alex was already moving, carving a smoother, slower line in his wake. He stopped beside him, planting his poles into the snow. Ethan sat up, coughing out a laugh, brushing powder from his jacket. His cheeks burned, though whether from the fall or from Alex's gaze he wasn't sure. Alex leaned closer, grin crooked but voice soft. "Next time we bring a snowboard, you can laugh at me then." Ethan huffed, shaking his head, but the corner of his mouth tugged upward. The slope stretched endlessly below them, but in that pause it didn't feel so overwhelming. The ski lodge cafeteria smelled of fries, melted cheese, and wet gloves drying by the heater. Trays clattered. Boots scraped against the wooden floor. They found a table near the window, still in half their gear, steam rising from trays piled with burgers, onion rings, and paper cups of soda. Mark sat down with a groan, already tearing into his sandwich like a man who'd earned it. "Now this," he declared with his mouth half full, "is why I ski?" Daniel rolled his eyes, sliding a tray of fries closer. "We're eating something green tonight, real food, I'm serious." Alex laughed, elbowing him. Good luck convincing him of that. Ethan tried to keep pace, unwrapping his burger, but Mark was already grinning at him. "Not bad out there, rookie. You only crashed once every 100 feet. The table erupted, Alex included. Ethan forced a smile, biting down on his burger like it might help swallow the sting. Later, when it was just him and Alex clearing their trays, Ethan spoke under his breath. "Why did you laugh with them?" Alex stopped, tray in hand, brow furrowing. Then his grin softened, more private now. "Sorry, Alex, it's our way of saying we like you. And I laugh because He tilted his head. "You're stubborn enough to take it." Ethan huffed, shaking his head, but his lips curved despite himself. "Next time I'll make sure you're the one falling." Alex leaned closer, dropping his voice. "I'd let you catch me." The cafeteria noise swelled around them, trays clattering, boots stomping back out to snow. But for that moment, the noise felt far away. The dinner was good, better than Ethan expected. Not the polished elegance of the chalet's first night, but warm and unhurried, tucked into a little restaurant at the edge of the village. The wine loosened his shoulders, the food filled without ceremony, and for the first time since they'd arrived, he felt like he wasn't measuring himself against the room. It was the walk back that stayed with him. Snow fell steady, flakes drifting under the street lamps, the night softened by their glow. Mark and Daniel walked ahead, close enough to brush shoulders, their gloved hands linked as naturally as breathing. They didn't talk much. They didn't need to. Years had done the work words once carried. Ethan slowed, watching them. There was no performance in it, no display, no self-consciousness. Just two men who had already weathered their storms, who had chosen, day after day, to keep holding on. Beside him, Alex kept pace, gaze forward, content in silence. Ethan hesitated, flexing his gloved hand once before sliding it into Alex's. The leather brushed awkwardly at first, but then settled, the gesture steady. Alex glanced down, surprise flickering only for a second before his gloved fingers closed firmly around Ethan's. He gave the hand a squeeze, turning his head just slightly. "Thanks for coming," Alex said quietly. Not casual, not perfunctory, but with a weight that landed deeper than the words themselves. Ethan swallowed, his chest tightening. Not with nerves, but with something simpler. Something surer. And then, out of nowhere, a snowball hit Alex square in the shoulder. Alex froze, mock offense lifting his brows, while Mark turned ahead, already grinning. "Thought you two needed a reality check." Ethan blinked, caught between laughter and shock, then scooped a handful of snow, packing it clumsily but quick, and hurled it back. His throw hit wide, exploding near Mark's boots, but it was enough. Mark whooped. Daniel ducked, already forming his own. Alex's grin broke wide as he crouched, gathering snow in practiced handfuls. Within seconds, the quiet walk became a flurry of shouts and flying snow, gloves stinging from impact, breathless laughter cutting through the night. Ethan's cheeks burned, but this time not from embarrassment. He was laughing too hard to notice. By the time they reached the chalet, snow clung to their jackets and scarves, boots soaked, hearts racing. Mark shoved Alex one last time before heading inside, Daniel shaking his head but smiling. Ethan lingered at the door, catching Alex's grin through the frost and firelight. It wasn't polished. It wasn't measured. It was messy, loud, boyish, and it felt like belonging. The fire snapped low and steady, each crackle echoing in the quiet room. Shadows bent along the wood-paneled walls, the beams overhead carved in orange light. 4 wineglasses glowed on the table, half-finished, their surfaces catching the warmth. Mark's laughter had ebbed into something gentler, his shoulders easing as he leaned back. For once his voice dropped, softer, as though the fire demanded honesty. "There was a winter," he began, "when Daniel and I nearly called it quits. Too many days circling each other in silence, too many nights waiting for the other to speak first. We thought maybe we'd lost it." Daniel shifted closer, their knees brushing. His hand covered Mark's, steady, unflinching. Mark glanced at him, his voice softening further. "But then one night, sitting by a fire not much different from this one, we talked, really talked. And we chose to hold on, not just that night, not just once, but every day since." The room stilled. The words hung with weight, but not heaviness. They didn't drag the air down. They filled it, warm and whole, the way years lived together leave no need for polish. Ethan felt it land. Felt it in his chest, in the steady rhythm of the fire, in the silence that followed. He hadn't expected to be moved like this. By another couple's story, by the raw simplicity of it. Love not as perfection, but as persistence. Beside him, Alex cleared his throat lightly, voice carrying into the quiet. Not rushed. Not just for Ethan. For the room. "I've always admired that," Alex said, nodding toward Mark and Daniel. "Not because it's neat or easy, but because you chose. Again and again when it would have been easier not to. His gaze flicked to the flames, then lifted, finding each of them before settling back to the fire. When I first met Ethan, a pause, deliberate, waited. I wasn't looking. I thought that spark was behind me, but it was there. Still is, and sitting here tonight with all of you, it feels like I brought the right person. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was thick with warmth, with something given openly and received fully. Ethan sat frozen for a heartbeat. The fire blurred in his vision, heat gathering in his chest in a way that had nothing to do with the flames. He had known Alex would say that not here, not allowed, not for others to hear. Something inside him gave way. He shifted closer, first his shoulder brushing Alex's, then leaning fully against him. The movement wasn't casual. It was a decision. Alex moved easily, lifting his arm, wrapping it around Ethan's back. The gesture was natural, steady, as if he had been waiting. Ethan exhaled, long and quiet, pressing his temple against Alex's shoulder. He stayed there, letting himself feel the warmth of the fire and the firmer warmth of Alex's body beside him. For the first time, he wasn't the outsider. He wasn't measuring himself against anyone. He belonged. And it was good, really achingly good, to be here. When Mark and Daniel finally rose, it was without hurry. Daniel touched Mark's shoulder. Mark answered with a grin that hadn't faded even through the memory of old storms. Their footsteps carried softly up the stairs, leaving warmth in their wake. The room settled into hush. Only the fire spoke now, crackling low, throwing shadows that shifted like old memories against the walls. Ethan stayed close against Alex, still tucked into his side, though the silence pressed differently now. It wasn't heavy. It was expectant. Alex shifted, tilting his head until his eyes caught Ethan's. No words, no need for them. The air between them had already decided. The kiss came steady, slow at first, then deeper, surer. It wasn't playful like the brush in Alex's room or heated like the half-joke on the bed. It was something else. Something chosen. Ethan leaned in, letting himself match it, answer it, until the fire blurred and the warmth was more than heat. When they finally drew apart, their foreheads rested together, breath mingling. Ethan let out a quiet laugh, soft and a little uncertain. Alex chuckled, his hand squeezing at Ethan's side, pulling him in. I love you. Ethan laughed again, freer this time. The sound carried lighter than it had all weekend. Alex rose, steady, and offered his hand. Ethan took it without hesitation. Together they climbed the stairs, the fire crackling behind them, carrying its warmth into whatever waited next. ENTJ and INTJ, one who moves with certainty, the other who questions every step. Together they find balance not in perfection, but in the quiet choices made along the way. Some trips are remembered for the mountain, the speed, the falls, the races downhill. But for them, it was the after, the firelight, the laughter breaking through silence, the hand found in falling snow. For Alex and Ethan, Whistler was never about skiing. It was about choosing, not just once, but again and again. The way love always asks you to. This was the unplanned weekend, a story of certainty meeting hesitation, and of trust built when silence turned to closeness. That's what happens when men are too intimate, when an unplanned weekend becomes a promise kept. This was Alex and Ethan, a story of firelit belonging, and of love carried quietly forward.